Hey, this is Don from Padlock Technologies again with another video. This time we're going to talk about firewall insertion or service insertion in a VXLAN fabric. Now, if you don't know anything about mp-bgp, EVPN, VXLAN, I know that's a very long thing to say. I'll put a video up here somewhere to some of the videos I had, or maybe one of the videos I have about BGP, EVPN, VXLAN, or VXLAN, EVPN, depending on how you want to say it. So to go on with the theme of concept before configuration, I'm going to the whiteboard, tell you exactly how it's set up, why you're going to do this, right? Because knowing why you're going to do something is better than knowing how to do it, because you don't want to design anything wrong. So let's go ahead and get to the whiteboard and let's go over this. All right, so here we are at the whiteboard. And what we're going to say is firewall service insertion. I know I spelled that wrong, but whatever. All right. So what we have is our typical VXLAN fabric here. So we have our spines and we'll have our leaves down here. And this is exactly what you're going to see in the lab. So let's do this. All right. Now this is going to be a border leaf in the lab. This is just going to be a leaf and this is going to be a leaf. So what we're going to do is we are going to insert a firewall down here. And this is what's going to be known as our OBEW. So outbound east-west firewall. Then you're going to have obviously a router here to get out to the internet. So this is going to be INET over here. All right. Now let's put some servers, or it's going to be servers in the lab. You know what? I probably should have made it a different color. So let's just walk over that. So that color. All right. So I'm going to do it at an L3 level. Now, technically in VXLAN, we could have just did this all L2 with L2 VNIs, and then the gateway would exist here for every last one of my L2 devices, right? So let's say VLAN 10, the gateway would be here, and VLAN 11, the gateway would be here, but that's not what I'm doing. Basically what I'm doing is I'm gonna have two tenants, and let's say the ones in yellow are my web apps, and the ones in green are my databases. So what's going to happen is every time web apps want to talk to database apps, they have to, I'll use yellow for this, it's going to have to go through VXLAN, through the fabric, to the firewall. Firewall is going to have some type of policy here, and then it's going to go back up through the border leaf, through VXLAN, and come back around this way. So why would you do this? Very simple. You want to expect the traffic going from one VLAN to the other VLAN. Now, if you do traditional VXLAN, the routing would stay local to the VTEP unless it has to go to another device that's in the fabric that holds the server that you want to talk to. But in this situation, you are going to put inspection to make sure that nothing malicious is happening through your VXLAN fabric. Because if you do it the traditional way, if let's say this server was compromised and the database was in the same tenant or VRF, well, then I would just move laterally and attack there. And then I could do something here with that, right? With this method, with the service insertion, if something were to go down and it went back to the firewall, and let's say I caught it here, well, then I can block it from getting to the database because the firewall has the policy that says, has the inspection on it, the malware inspection, IPS, all that stuff. So what is the con of doing this? Very simple. Now, in real life, you're not going to have a single point of failure. So I'm not going to mention that. But you're going to put a lot of load on this firewall because not only is it having outbound traffic, but now it has to handle east to west traffic. So you better have a very beefy firewall for this type of design, because if you don't, you could really put a lot of pressure on this firewall and end up causing some issues. So that's basically firewall insertion. And I want to show you the traditional way of doing this. If you're doing something like Nexus Dashboard or ACI, they have their own separate techniques on how to do firewall insertion or service insertion. So let's go ahead and get to the lab. You're going to see this actually in the lab. So let's take a look at it. All right, all right. So here we are at the lab. So as you can see, just like I said, you have spine leaf architecture. We have our green and yellows for different tenants. And then we have our firewall over here that is going to be our outbound east-west. Now this is a FTD running FDM. So if you want to actually take a look at that, let's just pop over here and let's log into it. I think it's 165. Yeah. So let's log into it here. All right, so once that goes in, we'll be good to go here. And I'll show you from a routing perspective, the policies and all that good stuff on the FDM platform. And I'm running BGP to the border leaf. So between these links here that's going to the border links, I'm running BGP so that it can learn the routes from the fabric. So let's look at first, let's go here. And we will just do show route BGP just so you can see it. All right, so here's my BGP routes. As you can see, this is tenant 1, tenant 2, or tenant 1, which is 192.168.1.0/24. So that's my VLAN 10, and then VLAN 11 is 2.24. Now, since I'm redistributing HMM routes, they're going to be /32s. They will not be the overall subnet. It won't be /24s. These will be actually /32s, as you can see here, all /32s. So that's the routing. And from a policy standpoint, let's go to our policy and get rid of that. So here's our ACPs here. So this is from tenant 1 to tenant 2, and tenant 1 to tenant 2, or tenant 2 to tenant 1, doesn't really matter. I just did something simple so you can see the concept. Normally, I would put some type of inspection here. Then our default internet rule, which I'm going to show you I can ping to the internet as well. So that's our outbound functionality, and that's allowed. And then from a NAT perspective, we have our NAT rules that are going to match its respective tenant and allow it to get out to the internet. That's all I really did. But again, in the access control rule, I would put inspection here, but I'm not really using Windows machines to do this, to show this concept. But I would put inspection mail or inspection in IPS to make sure that any malicious traffic that is caught trying to go laterally will get stopped by the firewall. Again, this is something you would do, and this will be a way bigger firewall. And I would probably have HA here as well, just to make sure that, hey, if something of this goes down, I have a backup. So now let's go to leaf 1 so we can validate our tenants. And you can see that they are not in the same routing table here. So if we just do show run section VRF, as you can see, we have tenant 1, which is VNI 3000, and then we have tenant 2, which is VNI 3001. And then if we look at interface VLAN 10, that should be in tenant 1, and then this should be in VLAN 2. Okay, so that matches up with what we just saw on the firewall. And if we do show IP route VRF tenant 1, as you can see, the only thing we see is the default route because I'm advertising the default route via BGP from the firewall. And then I see my other neighbor, which is .2, and I'm .1 here. Obviously, that's the local to me. And if I do tenant 2, same thing. I see 2.2, which is on the other VTEP or leaf, and then I see 2.1, which is me, and I have a default route going out. So those two tenants, technically from a routing perspective, cannot see each other. So when it needs to go out and come back in, it will go all the way to the border leaf, And as you see, you can tell by that's the IP address there. That's the border leaf. And then it will go back into the fabric and go to its respective VTEP wherever it needs to go. All right. And then I did not show you that BGP was running here. I kind of verified it from the command line, but here's my BGP configurations for VXLAN, my BGP stuff. So if I wanted to edit it, you can actually see all the stuff that you technically have to configure on FDM. Again, FMC manage or SMC manage FTDs are a lot easier to configure than FDM because you just got to get used to how they configure it in FDM. So next thing, let's go to monitoring. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to go to sessions, or actually events, and it should be connection events. We shouldn't see Jack right now because I'm not doing anything. So now, first things first, let's validate that just VXLAN is working, period. So we're going to do show IP, and I'm going to ping .2 so you know that VXLAN is working. So ping 192.168.1.2. That's normal VXLAN. That is not going to go through the firewall whatsoever because it's local to me. Oh, it's local to the fabric, so I don't need to actually transit the firewall to get to that. But now here's the test. I'm going to ping 2.2 and not 1.2, which is technically this server right here. All right, so I'm going to ping that from this, to make sure I'm right. Yeah, it's actually this server. VPC9 is that server. So I'm going to ping it from VPC6, which is 1.1. So this should traverse the firewall to get to it. So let's go to 2.2. And just so you to validate that that is the server, so IP. So as you can see, that is 2.2. Doesn't know, and you know, tenant 2 has no idea what tenant 1 is, and this is where VXLAN multi-tenancy comes in as well. So that's a concept that you're learning right now in this video. So now let's ping it. And as you can see, I can ping it. Now, just to validate that it is not going through just normal the fabric to get to it, let's go to the firewall. If we see sessions on the firewall, that means that router or server 6 had to go through the firewall to get to server 9, compared to in normal VXLAN, if they were in the same tenant, I can just go directly over to the VTEP. So now let's look at, and there we go. Took a little, I know this takes a little while for it to show up, but here we are. Showed you server 1, going to server 9, it ingress tenant, egress tenant, right? And then here's the rule it hit. So tenant firewall insertion rule. So that shows you that I had to go out to the firewall to go back in to get to the client, or to get to the server that I need to connect to. And if I was putting any kind of inspection on it or something like that, and get off of this. If I was going to do any inspection or anything like that, if something was bad or malicious and the firewall caught it, it would block it immediately. So this is that security function on how to protect VXLAN fabric within the fabric, right? So basically you're going to insert a firewall and allow that to do the inspections that you need. And I need to validate that we can actually go to the internet too. So I'm just going to do a simple ping out to the internet. Now, I don't believe I'm logging this rule. Let's see here. So the policies, and let's see if I'm actually logging this rule. Because if I'm not, then we'll never see it. Let's see, logging. No, we're not. So we're going to do that. And then we'll save it. And then when I ping, you'll see it go through. But for now, let's just go through this here that you guys can see. Obviously, I'm pinging out to Google. So now that traffic has gone out of it. When it ingress VLAN, not VLAN 1, it ingress VTEP 1 or leaf 1, came out of leaf 4, went through the firewall, went to this router down here, and went out to the internet. Now, in order to validate that. And from a logging perspective, I just need to deploy this. Let's go to the logging history. And this is the task history here. And then when that turns green, we'll run the ping test again. And then we'll see that in the log, hey, it came out of firewall one, not firewall. It came out of leaf 4 with the firewall, went out, and then we should see some logs there. Now, the only reason why this is working because the firewall knows how to get back to that server. If I wasn't using BGP and didn't have any routes in there, I would have to use a static route on the firewall to point it back to where it needs to go. But since you're just use BGP at this point, it's really no point of wasting a bunch of time with static routes and redistribution. Just use BGP in your. It's the best option for anything with VXLAN is BGP. Anything else can turn into a little hairy problem when it comes to like manipulating routes, or you're doing something like your vMotioning things and you move it to the secondary server. Well, if you just see the main subnet and not the /32, you can get some asynchronous routing going on. So you just got to be careful when you're trying to use external connectivity and not using BGP. This is taking its time to push this to the box or whatever, but we will wait. Let's go back to here. I just want to make sure we see it in the logs here, which we will probably not see until come on. And the reason why this is slow because I have other labs running, so I'm utilizing a lot of resources on my lab. So this thing is going to be a little slow. Just make sure that goes through this time. And there we go. So it's coming from that server that I had. I'm going out to Google. It's going to whatever zone it's going to, or egressing. It's coming out of the outside zone. And I'm getting added to my outside address. So everything is working. And as you can see from the firewall policy, I'm hitting my default internet rule. And that is firewall insertion and VXLAN in a nutshell. Again, watch this video again if you didn't get the concept, especially go back to the whiteboard so you get it. Remember, concept before configuration. If you like videos like this, I hope it was really informative. Don't forget to share, comment, like, and subscribe. Come on, man, bring more people to the channel. Every time y'all bring people to the channel, somebody else learns something, and they don't have to rack their brain and almost run their head into the wall because they can't get something working. Trust me, if you're going for your CCIE or even CCNP, you're labbing, there's going to be a time where you're going to want to run your head into the wall based on something not working. And it's just simple configuration things that you may miss. So again, subscribe to the channel. This is Don for Padlock Technologies. Thank you and have a nice day.